Okay, I think we're all set as it's 7 o'clock and I think we've got everyone present. Let's kick off. First thing I'll do actually is, let's get the admin side of things out of the way first. So first of all, let's deal with apologies. Councillor Waller and Councillor Wolf, this is apologies, and substitutes. Councillor Oxley and great, thank you. Second item on the agenda is the minutes from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 30th of June. Does anyone have any amendments or queries to those minutes? No? Yeah, could I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Lammy. And a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Evans. The next item on the agenda, can I have any declarations of interest, please? Next item, item 3, any petitions, deputations and questions? Right, heading into the main business of the meeting, you should all have received a one-page revision to the agenda. Does everyone have that to hand? Basically, the reason for rejigging the agenda slightly is so that we can focus on the main activity for this evening's meeting, which is the approval of the External Audit Annual Governance Report. And as part of that, we also need to consider the Annual Governance Statement and the Statement of Accounts. So we're effectively going to start with item 9 on the agenda, then item 6, then item 5. And then we'll return to the agenda as per the papers that you've already received. So apologies for jumping around with it, but as one's dependent on the other, it makes a little bit more sense if we go through in that order. So, the first item, can we receive the External Auditor's Annual Governance Report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll take you through, you'll notice there's 2 papers submitted by ourselves. One was to make sure you had a report in time for your deadline for the committee, and then we issued a supplementary report just to fill out the gaps in the first one, because there was a timing issue about being able to bring you the results of the audit in view of the discussions with council and so on. But just taking a step back, the ICT 60 report has got 2 main functions. One is to bring you the results of the audit, and the second one is to give you a chance to make us aware of anything we need to know for our responsibilities. And just a reminder for the committee that the audit of 14-15 is carried out under the Audit Commission Act 1998, even though the Audit Commission itself finished on the 31st of March of this year. That was done because there was a continuous order for Parliament to allow the 14-15 audits to be carried out under that basis. I'll just take you through the report headlines and so on, and I'll hand over to Mike for the details. So just on page 185 of the pack, just got a summary there in the introduction where we are at this stage. We're completing the substantive procedures. The stage left is on to complete the audit, and we'll be talking about that when we're talking in the context of the certificate in a moment. So in terms of the headlines on page 186, what we propose is to be able to give an audit opinion which is unqualified. And it's important that at this point we pause and just reflect on the fact that our audit opinion across the whole of the document includes several elements. It includes the opinion on the accounts, the value for money conclusion, and also the certificate to complete the audit. And I want to take those as the committee to bear in mind there are those 3 separate parts. Now the audit opinion relates to the financial statements, and as I say we intend to give an unqualified audit opinion based on the information we have at present. There were some audit adjustments that we've been through, and there is one unadjusted amendment that we need to get the committee's approval for management's proposal not to amend. But subject to those issues being sorted on the actual audit opinion on the statements, then our intention is to give an unqualified audit opinion. We've made some comments there about the fact we looked at the local authority maintained schools issue. That was, we got some guidance from SIPA after a number of years uncertainty. There was some guidance about how to treat schools in terms of whose balance sheet they should be on, and officers have worked through that process. And we, because of the the value of schools, we treated that as what we call a significant audit risk, the need to make sure that was treated correctly. We also had a look and reported back on the general accounts processes and audit processes, and that we've had a good experience in terms of good working relationships with the council's team, and in fact the working papers have improved this year. And I noticed in terms of the accounts, you do make a significant effort to try and explain elements of the accounts to the public and give boxes which is not common elsewhere. So we needed to write this report at the stage of making sure there's something on the agenda, and we've noted there that there were issues to complete in terms of the value for money conclusion and also the certificates, and I'll come on to those in the second report. So at that stage, what I'll do is hand over to Mike from page 188 onwards in terms of the proposed opinion, and then we'll come back to those two elements in the second report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Starting at page 5 of our report, which is section 3. First of all, we give a reference to the matters arising from the audits and any particular audit adjustments that we identify. To echo what Tony's just said, there were no material adjustments to the accounts that we identified that we need to report to you, and there is only one unadjusted item which we've referred to as Appendix 2, where management would prefer not to amend the accounts. As it's not a material item, that doesn't affect our opinion, but we do need you as Audit Committee to endorse management's proposal as part of that, and to include reference to that in the letter of representation that we need you to sign. Although there were some changes to the statements, none of them have affected the year-end position on the general fund, or indeed the position in terms of expenditure on customer services. Moving on to the next page, we were provided with a copy of the draft annual governance statement that you considered at your last meeting. Since then, the county governance statement has been updated, and indeed you're due to consider it fairly soon as part of this agenda. We have been provided with a copy of that. We provided some feedback on that statement, and on the basis of our work, we're prepared to give an opinion that is consistent with our understanding. So again, there are no concerns that we need to raise with you as part of that. Page 7 of our report, we required understanders to report the outcome of the work that we've done in relation to significant audit risks. The status of voluntary aided and voluntary controlled schools has been unclear for some time in terms of how they're accounted for. CIFA for 14-15 have issued some quite specific guidance instructions as to how they should be accounted for. So this, for all education authorities, we've been required to consider how management have dealt with that particular guidance in the accounts, and again, we're happy with, well, in terms of the way they've dealt with them here, they're a relatively small number of schools but quite high value. We've looked at the working papers provided to us and considered the management's decision around the assessment. And again, there are nothing we need to report to you in terms of the way in which that's been dealt with. And the nature of that change has been disclosed in the financial statements. Page 8 of our report referred to two inherent risks which we report at all of our bodies relating to management override of controls and the fraud risk of revenue recognition. These were flagged up in our external audit plan, which we presented to you earlier in the year. In the summary of findings, we've set out the procedures that we carry out in respect to both of those risks. And again, there are no matters arising from that work that we need to bring to your attention. Page 9 of our report, we comment on the accounts production process, and there are no concerns in relation to those. Tony's already commented on the improvements which we identified this year, so we really just wanted to echo that. The audit was relatively easily carried out compared to previous years. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing the accounts on behalf of your officers in a very tight deadline and lots of working papers to be prepared. Officers were very helpful, the accounts were complete at the date we expected, and all of the working papers that we needed were presented to us in time. Where we needed additional working papers or explanations, they were made available to us in good time. So that helped considerably as part of this year, and it was certainly an improvement on previous years. There's one particular area where we've made a recommendation in Appendix 1, and that's really a follow-up of an item that we raised last year. One of the standard processes that managers carry out at the end of the year to identify any particular related parties for financial statements is to circularise elected members to ask them to return a fairly standard year-end declaration. We drew attention to the gaps in those returns last year and asked you as an authority to try and make sure that those gaps are addressed for this year. We're still experiencing some gaps as part of that coverage, so I guess we're repeating that recommendation. We're encouraging you to think about ways in which you can give us more complete representations as part of next year. We will follow that up with managers during the year, and of course we'll look at that particular area again as part of next year's audit. Related to, just very briefly, the control environment, controls on key financial systems. Again, there are no specific issues that we need to bring to your attention in relation to internal control weaknesses identified during our audit. Page 10 of our report draws your attention to our, again, requirement of the standards to declare our independence and objectivity. We're able to do that, and we've provided more information on that in Appendix 3. As part of our standard audit procedures, we require a letter of management representations from you, which is on the agenda and we ask you to sign. The only point I wanted to make there is, other than to ask you to include with that reference to the unadjusted items, there are no specific additional representations that we're asking from you. They are pretty much the standard representations that we expect. The rest of page 10 refers to items that are required under auditing standards to report to you, and they're there for completeness. Again, there are no points of concern that we need to bring to your attention as part of those. I won't cover page 11 because we'll cover that in more detail right from the conclusion of the second report. And indeed, I won't go through the rest of the appendices because I've touched on those as part of my main introduction. I mean, before we move on to the supplementary IC6 report, are there any questions on that section, which pretty much covers the accounts?
Do any members have any questions?
So just one, with regards to the disclosure of related party transactions, that's going to be spoken about later, is it?
It is going to be spoken about later, but I'm quite happy to address it here. I've already discussed this with the Assistant Director of Finance, so apologies, and understand that it has been an issue in previous years as well. As really it is an administrative process. The proposal I was going to put before members was that we issue these returns at a full council meeting and require that all members sign them on their departure, because then the job's done and it's no longer an issue. So if that could be limited, then I'm happy to discuss that going forward, but that would seem to just get rid of that issue altogether.
Well, the question I was going to ask, I mean, is it the same people who are doing it year on year, or is it just people not understanding what they should be doing?
I'll ask the Assistant Director of Finance to respond to that, but this last year, because of the timing of the election, and the fact that we had new members coming in and previous members departing, that added to the issue that we had in previous years. Have we had repeat offenders?
Yeah, through you, Chair. We have had some repeat offenders, but I think the major impact this year was obviously with the election pending. Some members didn't return their form, but I think we can take on board the suggestion that we've made and see if we can improve performance next year.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions at all? No. I don't have any further questions on the report, but I did just want to comment as well on your comments about the quality of the audit papers and improvement on previous years. And I understand we have a new member of the finance team, Andrew Merry, who's been with us just over a year now, and the Assistant Director of Finance is very clear that you've been a key element in the improvement of those audit papers. So we appreciate your efforts on that front. Thank you. Okay. Would you like to move on to your second report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the second report deals with the funding from the conclusion and the certificates. because the invoice, the second invoice was withdrawn by the Assistant Director Finance from the accounts, there was no impact on the accounts of the issue that came out. So it was then down to the value for money conclusion. And what we're required to do is look at the arrangements in place. And although the original incident happened in 2011, the issue was then in place in 14-15. So although it appeared in April 2015, it's clear that the council was looking at or working on the basis that that was in place. So what we then need to do is say, well, how does that map to our value for money conclusion in terms of arrangements? And what we've come to the view is that, and it sets out in the paper, it's a relatively short second paper, but I'll just summarise it, is that the arrangements were not adequate enough didn't reach that standard. So what we're looking to do is to qualify the value for money conclusion on the grounds of one of the criteria, instead of saying, well, which criteria should apply. And the financial resilience criteria is first we looked at that, but in terms of the impact on the council, I don't think that's big enough really to say that there's the financial resilience of the council is at risk. It's to do with the economy, efficiency, effectiveness arrangements that we need to then say, well, okay, they were not sufficient. There was a flaw, there was a mistake, the council admitted there was a mistake made, which then has caused the arrangements to be undermined effectively. So when we issue the audit opinion, the value for money section will have what's called an except for conclusion to say that there's a qualification on the basis that the arrangements were adequate with the exception of that area. So then we move on to the certificate, and that moves then back to the wider role of the public sector auditor. And it's not just about the council, it's not just about value for money conclusion. One of the things we have to do as an auditor of any body that is overseen by the Audit Commission Act to consider, is there any issue where we need to consider the need to issue a public interest report? There are other aspects as well, such as the power of the auditor to issue a written recommendation that have to be considered by the full council, Section 11 recommendation. What I've also had today is some representations from members of the public raising issues of concern. I haven't raised what would constitute an objection to the accounts, but have raised issues. But also, as you now see, I'd issued this report prior to those coming in today. And what I've come to the view is that I need to take time to consider those other powers and responsibilities. So what we will be doing is withholding the certificate to allow us to take a step back and look at all of the processes involved, look at the issues, and to see whether any of those extra due roles and responsibilities under the Audit Commission Act should be applied. Obviously, I can take into account the fact that the Council has produced a report in the public domain, and the Council has worked to try and address the issue that arose. Equally, though, the fact is that there's no overriding rule of public money that I need to take into account the impact of what's happened and consider whether there's anything else that further need to do in terms of my responsibilities. I don't need the public's observations to be in the format of an objection to take their views into account. I don't need an objection to do that. It's my decision whether I want to do that for my own purposes. If there was an objection, then that would force the issue. But I would just say it's decided that I needed to take time to have a look, work further with officers. Obviously, this is a very busy time in terms of our workload, in terms of getting local government. All of local government has a deadline within September. It wouldn't be appropriate to try and rush anything through. We need to take time to step back, talk to officers, work out what's happened maps to our responsibilities, and take that decision. And we'll obviously be talking with officers as we go through that process. So to summarise, the value for money conclusion is qualified, and the certificate is withheld to allow those further reviews to take place.
I have to say I welcome that delay, actually, given the situation where we've only been able to share with the public the position just over a week ago. I think it's very important that the public do have the opportunity to raise any objections by the independent external auditors. So I think it's important that we allow you sufficient time to be able to complete that exercise so that you can then come back to us and hopefully confirm that you're happy with the processes that have been put in place. subsequently.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, one option available, because the issue arose in 15-16, effectively by merging in 15-16, one option would be to issue the certificate in 14, but I don't feel that would be appropriate in terms of due process. Perhaps because at that point it's only been just over a week since the report was in the public domain because of the discussions that are going on. So I felt the appropriate thing to do was have a certificate to allow that process. There is a different process in place next year when there's a set time for objections to be made, but the fact is this audit is under the Audit Commission Act, which allows electors to make representations and objections if they are registered electors right up until the point the certificate is given.
Okay, thank you. Do any members have any queries specifically about that certificate and that process?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I probably didn't quite catch. Is there a deadline for these observations to come in, or
the right to make an objection to an audit, a formal objection, is up until the point at which the certificate is issued. So what I can do is issue the audit opinion with the qualified value for the conclusion. At the bottom bit there will be a note saying that the certificate is withheld, and therefore the right of any registered elector to make representations to and make an objection to it on the 14-15 audit is then still open.
Do you have in mind a timescale at this stage? Or?
I think we need to take stock
okay.
and then have a look. Obviously, there's a lot of issues flying around, so
yes.
we need to I wouldn't want to stick to a timetable. It's got to be right.
Yes.
Bottom line. As a guide, if a full objection comes in, the Audit Commission's expectation is that it's dealt with within 9 months. But sometimes they can be much shorter than that. Occasionally, it can be much longer than that. Depends on the complexity of the issue, because it goes into a due process and becomes a quasi-legal process if there's an objection. But what I'm doing is looking to see whether I need to exercise any powers or responsibilities under the 14-15 audit. That doesn't preclude me from looking again in terms of the 15-16 audit, because obviously it further into that period as well.
Can I request then that we have an update at the next Audit and Risk Committee meeting, which I believe is early January, if you haven't yet reached a point whereby you're happy to complete that piece of work?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we'll keep in contact with officers as well, and we'll have to update you between our meetings.
could I ask you how many observations you've had so far?
Several emails today, how you define the observations, but there's been correspondence from more than one person.
From more than one person?
That's right.
Yes. And do they come from all over the county?
I haven't checked the geography of whether they are, the people involved said they were registered electors.
Mm-hmm.
There is the power to make an observation to an auditor is not restricted to registered electors. Anybody can make any representation to any auditor about any audit. The power that is given to registered electors in a particular area is to make a formal objection. So that's the limit.
Sorry, can I be clear? So far you have not received a formal objection, you received observations.
The objection process is set out. There's a requirement in the Audit Commission Act as to what an objection must tick several boxes. The observations I've had so far have not reached that standard, but that doesn't inhibit me in any way in taking those things into account, or the observations made into account. So for my own purposes, I've already decided to withhold the certificate. So the objection process is there for people to use if they wish to. I don't need that trigger to be able to follow it if I wish to do it myself for my own purposes.
Thank you. Yes, that's much clearer.
Yes, that's helpful.
I do appreciate it's quite a complicated process and it's quite involved.
Okay, so I think the key thing at this stage is I'd like to emphasise that what we've heard from the auditors that you're intending to issue an unqualified opinion on the statement of accounts.
Yeah.
So in terms of the actual accounts for the year ended 31st of March 2015, correct. We've got an unqualified opinion. The value for money opinion has been issued as being qualified at this stage, but further work to be performed before the certificate can be issued.
Just not issued yet.
Not issued yet, thank you. So are there any further questions on this item from the members?
I perhaps should just add, if that's okay, Chair, if an observation comes in which causes doubt about the accounts, and it could be something completely unrelated to the open development, then I'd have to take that to account. What I can do is also revisit the opinion once I've done my review of the other areas in terms of roles and responsibilities, and if need be, I could go back and change that opinion. So until the stick is given, effectively the opinion and the conclusion are not finalised.
So we can consider that to be a draft unqualified opinion on the state of accounts at this stage?
It's my opinion at this stage, yes.
Yes,
So
yeah,
but
to be confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, can I confirm that members are happy to receive the annual governance report as we've just discussed it? And then we need to move on to consider the letter of representation that I believe you've got in Appendix 1. I'm going to, as I believe you all sent this in advance, I'm going to assume that all members have read the letter of representation. Mr. Crawley's kindly already pointed out that the one item that they've referenced is the difference in opinion in terms of the Ashwell depot and how it's being classified in the accounts. Have I got that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say it's just an opinion. I think we agree what the issue is.
Apologies.
Forgive me, Chair. The letter of representation wasn't available at the time the agenda was issued, so it has been tabled for members tonight. So I can see members looking in the copy, but it is on the table. You're quite right to say that we have, from an officer point of view, reached a conclusion that we won't be adjusting for one of the items around Ashwell depot that you refer to, and if the committee agree with that approach, obviously in signing the management representation letter, we will put effectively the appended to it will be the item that we're not adjusting, so that the auditors understand that we're not adjusting that as part of the accounts. But I think, again, to emphasise one of the points the auditors made is that this is a standard management representation letters that sent to all authorities with just that one issue that's raised. So there's not any other matters of substance that they're asking us to make separate disclosure or representations on.
Okay, thank you. In that case, can I point members back to the KPMG report, and it's
page 196, Chair.
Thank you, page 196 of the overall papers. This is the item that we're talking about, whereby the Ashwell depot, at the time of the end of the financial period, 31st of March 2015, this item had been classified as an asset held for sale because it was being actively marketed. And am I correct in saying at that time we'd got potential buyer considering the purchase of that item?
Yes.
Yeah. Subsequent to that, that purchase has fallen through, which is the basis on which KPMG have suggested we should perhaps consider it as being a fixed asset again rather than an asset held for sale. It actually has no impact at all on the profit and loss account or the financial statements, and it's really a classification between two asset classifications in the accounts.
That's right, and there's a certain difference in the two. Assets held for sale are not depreciated, but the depreciation gets reversed out anyway.
Yeah. So
it's not there, but it is a requirement of the ISA that we ask you to put in writing if you agree with management not to make a change to ISA 450. Yeah, so it is a request. We have said because it's low materiality and because of the nature of that change, we're comfortable with that idea if that was staying present in the account.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that, because as I understand, the intention is very much to continue to market this asset, albeit we are looking into the reasons why the proposed sale fell through and seeing what we can do in terms of assisting any future sale. Do any members have any queries about that particular item?
Can I just have a couple of it from there, just to...
Please do, yeah.
Digest this.
Could I just check through you, Chairman, under that, on that page 196, assets held for sale are not required to be depreciated, I take it. Sorry, brief.
Yes. So So you're querying just the wording?
Well, the omission, I presume, thank you, yes.
Chair, we can come back to the management representation letter after we've looked at the AGS and the accounts. There's no reason why we need to take that recommendation now, because it might be prudent actually to wait until we've done the other business item anyway.
Okay, thank you. So then in that case, can I ask everybody to turn to item 6, the annual governance statement? Now, as Mr. Crawley has already noted, the PMG received a draft of the annual governance statement prior to the conclusion of the negotiations around the section 106 item. They have subsequently received an updated version of the AGS, and I don't want to take words out of your mouth, Mr. Crawley, would you just confirm your position regarding the AGS at this time?
Yes, just to be clear, we don't audit the AGS in the same way we do the accounts. What we look to see, it's like a negative assurance state. Is there anything in there that's not consistent with our understanding? And there's nothing we need to raise with you. It's consistent with our understanding of what's happened, the description of what's happened, there's a significant risk you highlighted and the development. So we have no comments there on the AGS. So it would be, there would be no comments in the opinion. Doesn't say it's consistent with understanding.
Great. Can I ask any members whether they have any queries on the AGS? In that case, the decision is that the committee approves the AGS as part of the 2014-15 statement of accounts. Could I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Lemmy. And a second, please. Thank you, Councillor Baines. Can I then ask members to turn to item 5, which is the statement of accounts? Apologies, could I have a show of hands from members that we are approving the AGS, please? Thank you. Okay, moving on to the statement of accounts. Clearly the two items we've already covered, the annual governance report and the annual governance statement, flow into the statement of accounts. The decision we've got to come to this evening is whether members are happy to approve the statement of accounts for 2014-15, including the annual governance statement. As Mr. Corey has already shared with us, the external auditors' views on the statement of accounts are that they are at this time comfortable to deliver an unqualified opinion on the statement of accounts. However, we've been asked to recognise that there is further work to be done regarding the value for money position, which could have a potential impact on the opinion on the statement of accounts. Have I phrased that correctly, Mr. Corey?
Not just about it's the other responsibilities and powers beyond those two elements.
Thank you. Subject to that, can I ask members whether they've got any queries specifically on the statement of accounts?
Jeff, obviously we're happy to take questions from members. If I could just say a few words about the statement of accounts before we do that. Obviously I appreciate the statement of accounts can be a difficult read. They're not the most easily accessible document in the world, even to qualified accountants, I have to say. I'm grateful for the auditors pointing out that we do in the statements try and be as helpful as we can to the readers. Andrew, thank you to you, Chair, for the comments you made about production of the statements accounts, and I'm very grateful to Andrew and other members of the team for the work they've done. I think they have done a good job. And in Appendix B to this report, on pages 121 and 123, Andrew has put together a sort of little guidance note that explains what certain lines and figures in the accounts actually are, which I hope members may have found helpful. What we've tried to do in the cover report to the paper is highlight some of the issues that we think might be of interest to members. So we're happy to take any questions on those or any substantive questions on the account.
Okay, so over to members. Any questions on the statement of accounts? The one thing I would like to share with members is that I have had quite an extensive meeting with the Assistant Director of Finance. Although a chartered accountant myself, not having practiced in the public finance domain before, I wanted to make sure that I really was comfortable with these statement of accounts. As you can probably see from my extensive post-it notes, I went on with quite a lot of questions, and the Assistant Director of Finance and Andrew Merry were very generous with their time to make sure I really did understand the accounts and had all my questions answered. So I hope that gives you all some additional comfort in terms of the quality of the statement of accounts that we're being asked to approve this evening. Okay, can I then have a proposer to approve the statement of accounts, please? Councillor Lemmy, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Rains. And could we have a show of hands to approve the statement of accounts? Thank you. Okay, can we then return the figures to item 4 for the rest of the agenda? Oh, apologies, yes.
Item 9, Chair, with the
Management representation letter. Councillor Lemmy, have you had sufficient time to review this?
4 more minutes, okay.
Please do. To approve the management letter of representation, please. Councillor Baines, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Lemmy, thank you. And could I have a show of hands that we are all in approval of the letter of representation? Thank you. Okay, item 4 on the agenda is the strategic risk.
You recall previously to this committee that we took a respondent update to update the committee in terms of the work that's been happening and the work that's planned. I to that point promised to present to you the strategic risk register at this meeting. What you've got tonight, I think which has been circulated, is a slightly updated version. The only change being the risk ratings on some of those risks. Quite rightly, there was some discussion last week about the risk ratings and whether they were still appropriate, so there's been some revision to that. The report follows on from the previous meeting, just to update you in terms of the work that we've got planned to do with Zurich Municipal and the refresh of the risk strategy, etc. Unfortunately, the contact with Zurich has actually been on long-term sick leave, so that's delayed the work slightly. They've allocated a new person for us now, so we'll start to push on that. In terms of the risk register itself, this is the whole of the strategic risk register. It's presented in different sections because it's previously been circulated to scrutiny panels, so as presented aligned with the responsibilities of those panels. The role of this committee is slightly different to the role that the scrutiny panels take in reviewing the risk register. And your role is about assuring yourselves over the process and framework for managing risk. Obviously, quite happy to take questions around the process and the risks on here. But previously, the division of responsibility, if you like, has been that the scrutiny panels perhaps dig into a bit more detail in terms of the risks themselves and the action plans around them. That's why there's been presented to both. So I wasn't intending on going through the whole register in detail. There's a matrix at the back which shows you graphically the risk profile in terms of where they sit. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, that anyone may have.
Members, do anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Jim. I recognise that we are in a different role here, but I was concerned with the Children's Scrutiny Panel on the retention rates and to a certain extent the absentee bits in absentee figures in some areas of the council. And I suppose our job is to be sure that you have the processes in place. Could you give us just a little bit of detail on the particularly recruitment and retention?
So, which list are you referring to?
I mean, it's this reference C1.
In the report.
And I noticed the options, the second one, to provide a wider range of benefits for staff. I mean, could you just give us a, I mean, is that working? Is it too soon to say?
I think our initial view of it is that it's having a really positive impact. So we've made some changes based on staff feedback around health and wellbeing. One example being that we've altered one of the rooms on the 3rd floor to make it into a proper staff room for staff to go and have another break area. We've made a number of facilities available in that room. That's just one example. We've had health and wellbeing road shows where we've had different so NHS stop smoking service, mindfulness, where we've had that in the county training for staff. We've got staff exercise activities now where just members of staff have organised activities and taken people off running. You've undertaken that. So there's been a lot of activity in terms of health and wellbeing to give more options to staff. And I think part of that as well has been to sort of create more of a team spirit around those activities. So it's had a sort of secondary benefit that we perhaps haven't originally intended for it to have. So I think more time will tell how well that develops, but certainly the response has been extremely positive to it. And that's been something that was mainly staff-led as well. It was something that there were groups of staff that kind of initiated that, and that developed that into something more corporate. And there's a health and wellbeing group that's led by Paul Phillipson that takes that forward. So it's certainly having a positive impact.
Well, that's very encouraging. And on recruitment, I mean, I recognise that it quite often is a national thing, that there's a shortage of particular skills, then there's not a lot we can do about it. But are we sort of positively marketing Rutland as a desirable place to work?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we are. I mean, a particular example is a piece of work that's going on around recruitment of social workers at the moment, and taking a very different approach to that campaign so that we can recruit and retain staff. There are particular areas where it's a greater issue. That's one area at the moment in particular where I think we've put some renewed focus into that. So obviously we need to wait and see what the outcome of that is. We are looking at things differently, trying different approaches to address those risk areas.
I recognise there are no easy solutions, but I think
Chair, was just to emphasise Councillor Baines' point really that in terms of the I suppose the pitch that we put in terms of recruiting people, encouraging people to come work in Rutland, you know, we do emphasise the quality of life issues and you know, the advantages of working at an authority like Rutland and how we can compared to some other larger authorities. So it is an important dimension of the material account. I think Mrs. Mogg is right to raise, I think ones we'll see over the forthcoming weeks, that we've developed a fairly targeted campaign around the People Directorate recruitment particularly, because we recognise that we need to do that to make sure that we stand out amongst the plethora of other authorities that are trying to recruit in a very, very competitive market.
As I have the floor, Chairman, C4 is reference, which is significant business interaction. I do notice that the first one is lots of key stuff, which rather follows on from that. But my specific question was actually, an exercise was carried out last October with senior managers across the authority to test the recovery plans, which is all very splendid, but it didn't tell us what the result was.
I can respond to that, Chair, if you wish.
Please do.
Yeah. This was basically, it was a desk-based exercise, if you like, so we didn't sort of physically test the plans at that stage. We have got the intention to do that. We brought together all the plans and sort of talked through a scenario. I think it was a flooding scenario we talked through in terms of testing the assumptions and the plans to see how they all fitted together. And actually the outcome of that was that when we put them all together, there were some gaps. And on the back of that, we went away and we reviewed the plans and addressed those areas so that we know now that the different plans actually fit together better than they did. We need to test that again now in terms of a scenario and work it through, but we certainly amended the plans and refined them on the basis of the work that we did. So that was all the senior managers from the 3 directorates.
So, sorry, through you, Jim, we are going to have, well, you are going to have another practice, as it were, any time scale on that?
I'm just trying to think of the thing here. We put it in for autumn. I think we talked about October, November.
Yeah. That's fine. It was just like I say, I was interested to know what happened.
We can certainly update the committee in the future in terms of how that testing process goes.
Actually, not pre-arranged, but perfect questions, if I may say, Councillor Baines, because the queries I had were around could we absolutely have an update on this at every audit and risk meeting? And having reviewed this document, the key thing that seems to be missing is where we've got actions, could we have a timescale where it's appropriate to include one, so we know when we're looking out for the outcome of something. And the final point was that if this document isn't already being shared with all the resources scrutiny panels, then I think it is valid for it to be, so that at least the opportunity is there to query the specific risks for each panel.
Yes, Chair. The intention is to raise up the scrutiny chairs to determine how they want to build that into their work programme. That's something that we can take forward.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, and if I may just come back in terms of the point about the actions and timeline. It may be that one of the outcomes of the work that we're doing to refresh the register and everything is that the format of this might change slightly. I'm not quite sure yet, because we're in the process of starting the work, but we can certainly make sure that that's built in.
Great, thank you. Councillor Doctor,
Right, unless Councillor Andrew to say something first. No. Okay. My point is that it would be useful to have had the most up-to-date version included with these, rather than spending time reading through these and then being given these on the night. These are, when you look at the risk matrix, it's considerably different to the risk matrix in here. For example, C6 is high critical in the ones which we were given earlier, and it's been relegated to low marginal.
I would agree. The only point I was that when I was meeting the Assistant Director of Finance on Friday, that update was still underway, so we were obviously a little bit short in time in terms of reissuing the update. But how often is it proposed that those actual matrix in terms of the impact of likelihood will be reviewed?
Well, the risk register should be updated as and when things change. And certainly, for discussion with yourself really in terms of as a committee, how often do you want to see this? Do you want it to every meeting? So it will always have been updated
prior to that meeting, but ideally the one we receive in the pack will be the latest version.
Chair, I think it's important to know it was me who started this late review of, and I think it's important to know if you go back to the job as after you go back to the original chart, you'll see that C6 actually was a number wrongly reported on the chart as an invalid. Yes, and it is, in my view, it wasn't a number, it's agreed. So we review officers, put us agreed, and then the chart. The first chart and the revision, that was just one of them.
But I think it is important that this is a live document, because obviously things change all the time. So if it could be reviewed in advance of issuing the papers for this meeting, then we'll all be looking at the latest version.
That was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
I'm not even on this call.
But we know you're here today. So thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. Any further questions from members?
No, my own comment would be that this has been hours now. It gets a bit early into coverage with it, so I don't have specific details from that. Just worth noting.
Yes, I have got one more. Risk reference PC2, which is on page 9. I didn't know what liquid logic meant, I put a beer through, but it sounded terribly alcoholic.
You'll be very disappointed.
Yes, it's the replacement case management system that's being implemented for the People Directorate. So we currently operate a system called RAISE, which is provided by Careworks. Being replaced by a system called Liquid Logic. So it's the whole records management system for social care, adults and children's services.
Thank you. I didn't think I'm very much wiser, but thank you for the explanation.
So if there's no further questions, the action is for the committee to note the contents of the risk register and the actions underway to address the risks. Could I take a show of hands, please? So then moving on to item 7 of the agenda. Which is our internal audit update.
Which is the audit manager who leads on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our report provides the Commission with an update of the internal audit performance against the 2015-16 audit plan. Since our prior meeting, we have finalised 3 audits, which are final reports. That's the recruitment of interims and agency staff, the waste management, the TEEP compliance, and the capital allocations programme board. All 3 of those assignments received a sufficient assurance rating. We provided executive summaries on those audits in Appendix B of our report. We have work underway on a further 8 assignments. And the full detail and the status of those reports can be found in Table 1, Appendix A of our report. It's also important to note that since the last meeting we had one change to the audit plan, so we have deferred the review of data retention and disposal to the next financial year, and we are now currently underway doing a review of the Open Enterprise Park, which was requested at the last meeting. Also big news to note in our progress report is we now provide details of the open audit actions. So you'll see in Appendix D and E of our report the overdue recommendations are high and medium priority. And we'll carry on to do that, we'll do that going forward. So also, we would like to note that there have been some updates on the counter fraud initiatives. The Council has launched an app which people can use if they would like to report a fraud. They suspect they can get to the Council. Well, that will be happening in October, November time. And also, the Council is working with colleagues across Leicestershire to develop a data hub, and that's going to be hosted by Leicester City Council. So we'd like to ask you to note the progress and performance of the consortium, and we're happy to take any questions.
Members, do you have any questions?
Jim, on the recruitment of interim agencies, I was a little bit concerned in the second paragraph to see that the testing highlighted that these processes have not been consistently applied due to lack of awareness or managing non-compliance. Sorry, I haven't digested the book sufficiently. What was your sorry, through you, Jim, what was your suggestion to remedy this, or is that not your remit?
We were asked that there was no policy in terms of looking at the recruitment of interim staff and what processes should be followed. The head of HR had communicated out the policy, the procedures and protocols, but there was no policy on the internet for people to refer to. So that's what we have recommended, that we actually have this standard policy people can go to, and it's easily accessible to people. Because a lot of the officers I spoke to weren't actually aware of the processes. So I think that will help.
The word non-compliance did worry me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because there are processes there, and there are people that did know about them that didn't comply, and there were various people that didn't know about them. There was a bit of a mixture. So it's about communicating that effectively and having a policy.
Director of Resource Department, question, the policies that are there, have they been in place for some time, or are they relatively recently new?
The protocol that have been implemented was fairly new in terms of the process that people need to go through. Originally triggered by changing some regulations about how we need to record agency worker time contractually, so that's what triggered it initially. So I think one of the reasons for wanting this piece of audit working plan this year was to see how well that have been implemented and how well we would follow our own protocols. So this is giving us a clear steer in terms of the areas that we need to address moving forward.
And welcome the recommendation that policy needs to be on the internet so it can be easily accessible. Have we any other suggestions in terms of trying to minimise or eliminate the occasions whereby there's actually managing non-compliance?
Excuse me, I think, as has already been mentioned, part of getting this right is the communication, making sure everybody knows what the procedures are, particularly where we've had turnover in terms of managers, making sure that new employees of the organisation follow the same policy and that they know that it's there. We've got other options in terms of working directly with our senior managers, and we meet on a quarterly basis, so we can give senior managers key messages in terms of change policies, procedures and things they need to be aware of. And we also quite frequently through our weekly One Council bulletin highlight key areas of policy that managers need to know about. We've got our e-learning system as well, which we roll out mandatory training through to make sure that people know which policies they should be operating to. So we've got a number of different ways to get those messages out. And also the cascade process through the senior management team. So, for example, bring myself to my heads of services and resources and making sure that they're clear what's expected of them, basically.
Okay, thank you. And Richard, could I just clarify, are all the internal audit reports followed up 12 months later as part of your sort of ongoing review process? Have I got that correct?
As you can see at the end of each of the executive summaries, there's a table there that details the actions that have been agreed. With each of those, the details will be provided within the report, which will include a timescale for implementation. So we will follow up with management on a monthly basis, and when it becomes due for implementation, that's when we'll start reporting them to you as part of Appendix D and E in your progress report.
So we will get an update in terms of basically how well this new policy is being embedded. Councillor Roxon.
We're just following on from the point Councillor Baines made. I just want to ensure that the safety of clients was never compromised in this context as a result of measures not checking.
That's probably Director of Resources as well as the I suspect.
No, I think if we found ourselves in that position, the report would have looked quite different, and we wouldn't have the sufficient assurance that it's being provided. So, yeah.
Was the scope of the report such that it would have picked up on that, though it was? Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Just to sort of comment on the 2.2 and 2.3 of the page 160, just the continued level of service. It's good to see that was still producing reports in time project as well.
Thank you. I don't think I had any further questions on the internal audit report myself. Thank you for the update. So,
could I just interject on one item? I have a significant disagreement about the Government Allocations Programme Board report about internal audit. I think they've missed some significant points. Going into that board, there's been dealt with by that board in the past. There's included central government allocations that do go to schools which are no longer part of the LA. Including section 106 and future SIL money, and the report reads in a fashion that it will only be dealing with 3 schools in the future of 7 currently. That's not the case, and that's inaccuracy, and therefore we'll be talking to the director about having this one refreshed again, but the right information in. I do agree with the report summary that there are people who are now on that board who are not declared their interest, and it's mainly because of the number of head teachers who have now found their way onto the board in order to maintain fairness between the cross-section of schools we have. Each one to protect their sector, i.e. those still within LA control, those that are academies, and as such that needs to be dealt with, and the previous chair recognised that it hasn't met under the new chairmanship, and that we have to deal with. But the basic principle of the board, I think, was missed entirely. What funding has been dealing with. And I can't agree whether it's been delayed because somebody who deals with the capital side which has to spend. I've not seen any delays as a result of that to their board. I've seen it speeding up from where it was previously. And less situations where after the event we've had schools complaining that their vehicles not taken into account. So I think that needs another piece of work.
Can I ask the head of internal audit, would you like to?
Certainly look into that, we can look back at what was proposed and whether there's any additional areas that need to be reviewed.
Would like to point out that we have, I think it's 15 days of contingency, don't we, in terms of this current year's plan. I'm not sure if some of those have now been used.
We have 15 days, which is contingency within the IT audit budget. So if there was another higher priority above anything within the IT this area, then we could use those days.
Right, okay.
Yes,
so can we request an update on that particular report at the next audit and risk?
Yes.
Thank you. So actually the one comment I did want to make was that I appreciate that you've now got the review of the OEP which has been substituted for one of the other items on the original plan for 2015-16, which was felt to be more relevant actually towards the end of the financial year, if not next financial year, and that was in response to a particular concern raised by Councillor Waters. Okay, if there are no further questions, can I ask members to show of hands and note the internal audit update report, please? So we're now moving on to item number 8 on the original agenda.
Members should be familiar with the quarterly report now that we present on the Regulation of Investigating Powers Act, more commonly known as RIPA. We are required to report activity to you on a regular basis. So this report does that. It tells you a bit more background information about RIPA and how it can be used, and also confirms that during this quarter we haven't had to use RIPA at all for any of our work. I actually can't remember the last time we did have to approve an application, and we continue to use open methods. There's nothing else really that I could add at this point. I can take any questions the committee got.
Do members have any questions on this particular report? No, Hannah Sargento. In that case, can I ask members by show of hands to note the content of this report, please? Thank you. We'll then on to item number 10, any other urgent business? Okay, thank you. In that case, at 8:05, it will be declared sitting closed.